Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. So in this video I'll just be sharing some of my theories regarding how we can have both of the versions of Eivor as canon in Assassin's Creed. Now this is just the first part of a multi-part series. I'll have more theories as more videos. Right, so getting to the main part of this video, as I've discussed previously, female Eivor seems to be taking a narrative preference over the male Eivor in comics. So that got me thinking. Even if she is the canon version, we have been told again and again that even the male Eivor is canon and that this actually plays a role in the story as we progress in the story. Now, how would that work? So, I have a theory regarding that, and that is what this video is about. Now, if any of you have played Origins and you have explored the tombs and heard the Isu messages, you might have come across some very specific messages. Now, I will let those messages play as I am talking about them, but I'll just take a moment and just play those messages so that you guys can hear it in case you don't know about it.
What if reality wasn't what you thought it was? What if this was all a construction? A masterfully crafted simulation? You know such things exist. You've been in the Animus before. In fact, aren't you in one right now? You know just how real a simulation can feel, even when it has long vanished. You've experienced the bleeding effect. Layers upon layers of reality, each blurring into the next. Which is real and which is not? What if none are real? What if everything you know is false? We ran thousands of simulations, searching for the right version, searching for Desmond. Each one of them felt real. Very real.
Right. So there is one message where the Isu talks about the different realities and how they looked through the simulations to find a very specific version where Desmond existed. And they also said that although this was one of the realities where Desmond existed, it doesn't mean the other realities were any less real. That is one point I want you to remember.
And you? What would you choose if you truly knew? Would you even want to understand? A dream within a dream where even the truth is sometimes a lie. In any case, simulations are not meaningless. They have purpose. The question isn't whether or not you are in a simulation. What matters is how much of your free will is actually yours, no matter how true you are.
Secondly, there is this one. So in this one, obviously he is now talking about how the Animus itself is somewhat close to the kind of simulations that they were running, and that the simulations themselves are not meaningless, and that the real question is not whether or not you are in a simulation, or rather the real question is how free you are in that simulation. And when I say free, I mean how much of your decision is truly yours. Is there other factors manipulating your decision, changing your decision, or are you truly actually free to take your own?
The reader has no power. He is but an observer. But the author invents the future. The author owns the future. A future where stories are avoided. A future where a loved one can be revived by the drafting of a new chapter. A future where humankind is more than it is today. A future where, just perhaps, we can all still exist together.
Again, then there is this one. So now in this one, the narrator describes how, the author of the simulation, I am assuming it's talking about the simulation itself, can change the stories. Whereas the viewer himself or herself cannot do anything about it. We can just experience. So in terms of Isu, I think in this statement, we are the viewers. So we can just experience it. We cannot actually change anything. But they do mention that the author themselves can change anything. Now, if you consider who the author of the simulation in this case is, it is Layla. We'll get back to that later. And he also says, more importantly, that ideally you could even bring someone back. Maybe even the Isu could coexist with them. Take note of this point as well.
The language of time works in many ways, two of which you can understand, as you are now. Linear continuity is a simulation that allows for variations. Within the linear continuity, there are nodes, choke points, moments where algorithms converge the flows of superposed possibilities to a single moment, where only one absolute truth is possible. Paths are fluid, continuous. Nodes are static, changeless. And the wave function collapses the paths into nodes which branch out, again and again, and again. And so I wonder, can you feel the wave collapsing, trying to course correct Desmond's act of defiance?
Now, there is also another part where they say that how the simulations, using whatever algorithms that they were using, they noticed that even though they had branches in those simulations, they always seemed to converge back on one node. They say December 21, 2012 was one of that node, and if you guys know about the lore, Desmond Miles saved the planet on that day. And that was a node. And they even talk about how the defiance in that node is causing the reality around you to collapse back on itself. I don't quite understand what they mean by that. Because it doesn't seem like the reality is falling apart. Unless they're talking about the real world in 2020, then yeah, reality is falling apart. Moving back to the topic at hand. So I think what all of this means is that the Animus itself was redesigned from Origins onwards so that it is not directly rendering genetic memories in a 3D space. It is actually creating a simulation. Now, an argument could be made that that was always the case, but it wasn't. In the beginning, in the earlier Assassin's Creed games, you had this synchronization bar. So if you stray too far from it, you get desynced. That's why if you die, you get desynchronized. Now, that also happens in Origin and Odyssey. I'm not saying it doesn't. What I'm saying is there is a lot more room to go around. Like, there are dialogue choices now. So obviously that is already kind of simulating what might have happened if something went differently. And we already know Valhalla also has these dialogue choices. So it is very much possible that Layla now is actually experimenting with the Animus to create her own simulations. Now she's basically going to use the DNA as a starting point. So the genetic memories of this Eivor, I don't know which one is canon at the moment. So the genetic memory of this Eivor, this one very specific Eivor, is just going to be used as a blueprint to create a simulation. And now, depending on what happens in the simulation, she can maybe investigate in other realities. And maybe she is looking for something in these simulated realities. She is also trying to find that something. Maybe she's trying to find the perfect version of, or the necessary version of Eivor, or a necessary descendant of Eivor to, stop whatever is going to happen in the next node. But one of the messages, I'll play it right now.
We have 6 senses, you have 5. Can you guess the one missing? Overload your mind's capacity.
Yeah, so this message also suggests, not suggested, it is basically the issue saying Layla directly to overload the mind. Now, of course, we have already seen that bleeding effect can make people lose their mind. I think it was Galena's mother who lost her mind, and even Subject 16 to some extent. But Layla now has the Staff of Hermes, and as we saw, it kind of makes you immortal. So maybe she can withstand the effects of the bleeding effect, and it's not just bleeding effect in case of Layla. In the earlier Assassin's Creed lore, the bleeding effect essentially caused you to see the things that your ancestor was seeing in your own world, where the realities were overlapping. But when you are talking about looking into multiple different realities, the bleeding effect might just get a whole lot worse. So maybe the Staff of Hermes is going to prevent that from happening, and that is why Layla can have this experiment, can do this experiment. But obviously we have to also keep in mind that Layla herself almost went crazy at the end of the Fate of Atlantis, and it was very clear that the staff was kind of making her corrupt. So all of that is there, and this could be the reason why she's experimenting with the simulations. What she knows so far is the reason she's experimenting with the simulations to find something. And maybe she's trying to find one single particular reality. Right. Now, anyway, all of that is just a theory at this point. I mean, this is just speculation. I don't know what's going to happen. So, as far as this theory is concerned, I like this theory. So just let me know down in the comments whether or not I make any sense, or does this theory look good? Does this theory have holes in it? And I guess we'll see. We'll wait for the game to come out, and we'll actually get to know whether or not I am even close to the actual reason of why this is happening. Right. All of that said, if you like the video, if you find this video good, press the like button and subscribe for more such theories. I have a few more of these videos coming out. I'll make it a series, and as for now, peace.